we come to session 9 of SQL Server Database Objects, which is Introduction to Triggers. Let us see the objectives. Define triggers, list the different types of triggers, and describe instead of triggers. What is a trigger? A trigger is a stored procedure that is executed when predefined events occur in a database. Triggers can be created to restrict user access to specific data. Triggers are useful in maintaining low-level data integrity and providing database security, although there are certain limitations with the use of triggers. These limitations are: a trigger can be created only in the current database. A table can have only single insert, update, and delete triggers. A trigger can be applied to only one table. The instead of, delete, or update triggers cannot be defined on a table having a foreign key with a cascade on delete or update options. The transact SQL statements such as alter database, create database, drop database, load database, and restore database are not allowed in a DML trigger. The trigger and the event that invokes the trigger together are considered as a single transaction. SQL Server allows the transaction to be rolled back while the trigger is being executed. The following facts must be considered while implementing a trigger. A rollback transaction statement can be included in the trigger definition. The rollback transaction statement rolls back the entire transaction when executed. A trigger including rollback transaction statement invoked by a user-defined transaction roll back the entire transaction. When a batch that fires a trigger encounters the rollback transaction statement, the entire batch is cancelled. Also, the statements following the batch are not executed. The following guidelines should be considered when implementing a trigger. The use of rollback transaction statement in the trigger code should be minimal. This is because the rollback operation has to undo all the modifications performed on the data while executing the trigger code. This affects the performance of SQL Server. Therefore, all data should be checked and validated before initiating a transaction. The permission that allows performing all statements on all tables is required for users to invoke a trigger. In addition to the rollback transaction statement, SQL Server allows commit transaction statement to be included in the trigger code. However, this may cause errors while executing the trigger. SQL Server includes a default transaction management mode called auto commit mode. In this mode, an SQL statement is committed or rolled back on its completion. If the statement executes successfully, it is committed, whereas if the statement encounters an error, it is rolled back. A transaction operates in the auto commit mode until it is overridden by implicit or explicit transactions. An implicit transaction starts a new transaction after the current transaction is committed or rolled back. An explicit transaction needs the start and end of the transaction to be defined. The begin transaction statement defines the start of the transaction, and commit transaction statement defines the end of the transaction. If a statement in a trigger code executes in autocommit mode and encounters an error, the begin transaction statement recovers all the modifications carried out by that statement. We come to types of triggers. In SQL Server, triggers can be classified into three basic types. They are DDL triggers, DML triggers, and logon triggers. The DDL and DML triggers can be either nested or recursive. We come to TDL triggers. TDL triggers fire stored procedures when data definition language, that is DDL events such as create, alter, and drop occur. DDL triggers help in achieving the following: stop specific changes, that is taking place in the database schema; take specified actions when certain changes occur in the database schema; keep a track of changes occurring in the database schema.